Good morning. My name is Lori. Welcome to my channel. We are quilters. Today we are working on a study in Scarlet quilt. We are working on this block. If you remember, the last couple weeks we've been preparing to make this block. So here I have my rough copy of Lily of the Field. It is from part 1, chapter 6 of A Study in Scarlet. And the first way to make this block is with paper piecing. 2 weeks ago, we worked on creating your own paper piece parts. I'm going to try to take a picture of this and make it the right size, but I cannot guarantee that it will actually be there. And we also talked about making applique templates. So I have both ways for us today. I have the paper piece method that we are, and flip and stitch corners that we will do. And you get a bonus triangle with or half square triangle with that. And I also have the pieces to do the applique. And we made an applique, and I'm going to make that whole background. And then I will machine applique this on. So 2 ways today to make the same block. Now that means I'm going to have an extra block. I'll probably use it on the back or for another project. So let's get started assembling the blocks. If you remember 2 weeks ago, this was my sample. So it is in different colors, but it is the paper piece version. And let me show you what you need for today's, and this will be available in a PDF. So I have my 4 copies of my paper piece pattern. I have the 4 corner squares that are purple. I have the gray background squares. There are 8 of the 3.5-inch background squares. The flip and stitch corners, there are 8 2.5-inch squares to cut or to do sew and flips. For the actual paper piecing, for the 2 and 3 cross pictures, I have a 28-inch long strip of 2.5 to do those side pieces. And for the center, which is background, I have, let me see. I don't even see where it is. It's probably there's 4 pieces. So it is a nice long. I have 2 pieces that are 16 inches long, which will make 4 8-inch pieces, which are well oversized, just in case. I will have a more specific number for you in the printable pattern, or I'll put it up on the screen over my head. So let's get started with assembling these blocks. I hear Dan in the background cooking our breakfast. So if I measured this, it actually comes out to, you could get away with a 6-inch strip, and that would still give you, so 6 times 4 is 24. That would give you plenty of space to clip. And then this piece that was 28, I folded and cut into 8 equal parts. So I'm going to start by putting my fabric right side up across that middle, and I'm going to make sure that I have it the whole way. Let me grab some pins, and I'm going to pin it in place because it is just easier to do it that way. I am going to, the easiest way, well, before I even pin that in place, the easiest way is to fold where you're going to sew. makes it easier. Or if you have that little wheel thing, you can use that wheel thing to perforate the paper. Okay, now I'm ready to pin. I'm going to lay my background fabric, because that's how I have it marked. The background fabric is going, and I want a little bit on each side. I'm going to pin it. And then, using light, or I could fold this back, and I could, here we go. I'm going to cut it so there's seam allowance. I could do this with a rotary cutter. I can approximate with the scissors. It will be all right either way. I'm going to cut that off. Now I know that I need to line up my fabric right there on where that seam is going to go. So now I can sew it, and I have the right sides facing so that when I flip it back, it will be ready to go. Now I am going to move my pin. Like I said, I hear my husband making food. So now this one is ready to go. I'm going to prepare all of them and run them through. I will be right back. While I was pinning, getting ready to pin the second one, this is what I discovered. If I put the pieces together and I sort of center the outside pink part, and I can put it, I don't even have to cut it or trim it. If I put it right there, so I have about 1/4 of an inch, and I'll have space here, I'll just have to trim more on this side. So I can line it up that way, and it will be even easier. So let me get those all ready to go. Oh, I love it when something works. Yep, that will be great. But I want to keep it about 1/4 of an inch. You know what would have been even smarter is to put a small cutting mat underneath so I wasn't pinning my wool mat. And this will take care of the first side. Woohoo! Let me go to the sewing machine. Okay, we have the camera at an angle where you can see. So I am going to sew on the line between 1 and 2. I have 1/4 of an inch here. The fabric is right sides together, and yes, the background fabric sticks above that paper piece quite a bit, and that's where you want it to be. I'm going to start sewing off of the paper outside the seam allowance. And I'm going to sew straight down, and I'm even going to sew right on past and right off the edge of the paper. Let me show you what I have. And to make life easier, I'm using a thread blob. Let me take out my pin. Oh, I hate thread tails, so I'm going to trim those off too. Oh, I see in my seam allowance, it's a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch, but that's okay, I can trim it down. When I open this up, it does cover the entire part of the paper where I need it to be, because that is out past the seam allowance. So there is one piece done, because you are sewing on the back, and well, you're sewing on the part with the lines, and then this is the pretty part that you will be looking at later. So let me get these done. Let me do some speed sewing, and I'll be right back. So now that I have these all sewn, I'm going to take these over to the iron, give them a quick press, and I'm going to trim off all this extra stuff. Just a quick rough chop if you will, so that I don't have to have all this stuff hanging out as I'm finishing between 1 and 3, sewing on that line. Be right back. I have trimmed off, and you see that there's no more gunk hanging around, but it's way outside my cutting line. So I still have room to trim nice and straight. And on the back, if I fold my piece between 1 and 3, I notice I have a lot of extra stuff. So I am going to use a ruler. I'm going to give myself, and I have a fancy little ruler that's called Add a Quarter, and it has a little ledge, and you just line that right up. But I'm not digging that out. I don't really know where I put it. So I'm trimming off that, and now I have 1/4 of an inch exactly right there. So now I can line up my pink piece, sort of center it on there, fold my paper back, and use a pin. You don't have to use a pin if you don't want to. You know how I feel about pinning. Hate it. But sometimes it has its purpose. So now, when I sew this, I'll have my 1/4 inch seam allowance. It will be perfect, and it will flip out and be easy to sew. Notice that the right sides are together. So that is all there is to it. I need to get these other pieces ready to go, and then I will do some sewing. So let me put this on speed record. So now I have all the pieces sewn on the front. I have pressed it open. Oh, a little fuzzy there. And I am ready to trim. Now I want that spot to have 1/4 of an inch. So I've got my ruler here, and it does have a mark. And it should come out to 3.5. It's drawn to 3.5. So I have 1/4 of an inch right there. That's the important thing, and that it be lined up straight. So I know there's a little edge of paper. It will be all right. Take a deep breath and trim your block. And it will be perfect. It will be. Trust me. Oh, I felt that it didn't go through there where all those stitches were. So there it is. And there's 1/4 of an inch there. And it is perfect. Let the paper in. Do not take the paper out until we are all done. So let me finish preparing these pieces, and we'll move on to the other part that goes right up here and here. Be back in a minute. Now that these pieces are all made, I'm going to set these aside, and I'm going to do the stitch and flips for the outside gray squares. So I have 2.5 inch pink square that matches this, and I have a 3.5 inch square of a second background, and I'm going to lay it on there. And I think because this is for a video, I will draw the line on the pink square using a Friction pen. I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from that line, and then I will flip it. And because it's a 2.5 inch square, I am also going to sew on the other side of the line and get myself a bonus half square triangle. So let me get this all set up, and we'll do some speed sewing. So as I was drawing my line on there, I got to thinking, oh my goodness, I told you the wrong thing. First of all, we're going to sew on the line, and then we're going to sew 3 3/8 of an inch or so away from the line on the bottom. So when I cut this off, I end up with my bonus triangle. But you need to sew right on the line for starters. So let me do that and I will be back. I'm a little flustered. Honey's at her appointment to be spayed and I always worry. So let me do some speed sewing. As you can see, I have the stitch and flip seam and then I have the bonus triangle seam. So I'm just going to cut off that bonus triangle. Excuse me. And that will give me my stitch and flip piece. Let me get these trimmed and I will take them to the ironing board and we can set up the final block. Love speed ironing as well, or speed pressing if you will, as well as speed piecing. So I'm just laying them one on top of the other, slightly staggered, and giving them a press toward that stitch and flip corner. And there I have my 8 pieces. I'm going to do my bonus triangles at the same time. Ooh, that one got a little bit crinkled because there's an extra thread. Hang on just a second. Oh, there we go. Now, stitch and flip corners, the great thing about those, they may not, that one is definitely not straight. I don't know why, it just isn't. But if I press them now, then I can sit down later while I'm watching TV and I can trim these out so they are actual useful little things. Unlike back when I started this channel, I had thousands of these that I had saved in a big craft box and they all needed trimmed. But now that I'm a little bit caught up, I trim them now and find a block for them later. So let's lay this out and then we can stitch it. Okay, here we go. These are the middle pieces, and I know this board isn't the exact size that I need, but it's all right. I just have to get it from here over to the sewing machine and get it laid out. So there is the center. And then these get turned in to make that lovely kite shape. Isn't that fantastic? That is a nice, it looks so complicated, but we have made it easier by doing it this way. And I will show you the other way too. And then we have the 4 corners that are purple. And now we can assemble it as a 16 patch or 4 patch, whatever you want to call it. Well, it's not a 4 patch, it's a 16 patch. So I will probably, how do I want to do this? I will probably do the center because it all has paper, and then I will do the outside points. And you'll notice that there's more space than there would be with a flying goose. So that is why I did it this way. So let me go assemble some parts and I will be right back. Starting with this part. Now I know I said I was going to leave the paper in until I'm done, but I'm going to take this paper off of the seam allowance because I would like to press that so that I have a better seam to join them together. You know how I am. I don't like to pin, but I do like to press. I'm pretty sure that's a sickness. But I'm pulling that paper off that seam allowance on both sides. So that way life can be easier and I can get a better seam with less bulk of paper in there to sew it together. Oh my goodness, that paper just doesn't want to come off. Don't know why, it's all from the same sheet of paper. at any rate. Now I can press these. I think I'm going to press them open just for the ease of pressing. I'm going to press them open, and then we will join them together to make the big pinwheel. On the sample I did way back when, and I didn't worry about this for the sample, there was a little tiny, it's off just a little tiny bit. If you want to eliminate that, let me show you how. If I line my piece up there, and then I turn it over to the paper piece side, there is where everything should meet. So if I put a pin through there, it should come out in the seam allowance here. So I know that I need to adjust that just a tiny bit to have it come out through the seam allowance on the other side. Lined up at the top, out through the seam allowance, and through at the junction. So I may need to fiddle with fullness a little bit. It will be okay. And I need to do that with this one also, because there are two of those. So through that junction, and then out the other side through the seam allowance. And it will be perfect. So let me do that and sew it and show you. I'm having trouble getting a hold of everything here. And because there is some bias in the paper piece things, there is room to adjust and fiddle. So this one, let's look at the one I've already sewed. This came out perfect. This one still has, even though I fiddled, still has that, but from a distance you can't even see that. So let me go put this, sew this, and I'll be right back. There is the paper piece version. I need to give it a little press. And now I need to go back in and remove the paper and give it another little press, and it will be ready to go. So that way worked pretty well. Next up, in just a few moments after I remove that paper, I will do the applique one. See you in a moment for method number 2. So with this method, the paper piece method, you do have a handful of paper you have to remove, and you have a pile of little scrap pieces of fabric that if you don't do something with those little scraps, it could be considered waste. Just saying, that's the drawback. But your points are very precise. It did require more pinning. Just a thought. So let me show you the next method. Here we go. Method number 2, applique. Last week, we made 4 applique shapes that match, pretty well match, the cross shape here. And we just drew that out and cut them out. And it can be different, whatever you desire. So we have a 6.5-inch block. We have 4 3.5 by 6.5 gray pieces, which may be hard to see on the gray background. And we are going to make this base block first. And then, after we sew this all together, we will deal with these applique shapes. So let me get this block assembled. It is just like a big it is a big 9 patch. Let me do some sewing and I will be back in a moment. Here's the block partway assembled. I have the center section and the 2 sides with top and bottom, however you want to look at it. And I'm just going to go finish putting in those 2 seams, and the main part of this block will be finished except for the crosses. So I ironed it, pressed it where it should be, and now I'm ready to place the applique pieces. This method seems to be much quicker, but the piecing part here went very quickly, whereas the piecing part on the other one, that's all I had to spend time on. So let me put the pieces on. And I see that, oh, they are overlapping a bit. Okay. Because I'm lining these pieces up here. Now, the other way I could do this is I could spread them so they're a little bit above. I don't like that. Let me see how much they're overlapping. See how much I need to trim off. Oh, come on, cooperate. Actually, you know what I think would go great right there before I sew those down even? I think that would be a great place for a button of some sort. Maybe something fancy. Maybe something a little flatter. Ooh. That is not flat by any means, but maybe something like that. Right there in the middle will be perfect. I'm not going to deal with the points, so I'm going to put a nice fancy button in there to cover up those little point overlaps. Let me get some pins and we can pin these on. Then I will go set up the machine and talk about it. I think I'll use 2 pins. See, I want these points on this line. And I am not hand appliquing these on. I am machine appliquing these on. Because I want life to be easy. It's actually easier for me to turn it so I can pin it than it is to try to figure out how to pin it going a different direction. Make sure that those points are there. Oh, and that is going to be perfect. Okay, a vital part of this is choosing the right color thread because you're going to see it. So that one actually blends in. When I lay that on there, it looks like it's a lot different. But when I lay it on top, you really can't see it very much. So I think this is the one. Let's try a lighter shade. This one I can see. It has a little bit more orangey peach in it. So this is not the one. I have a bunch of this. I have a bunch of this color. or shades of this color, and it's not quite right. So this one, when it's spread out on top, you can't see it, so this is the one. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I don't use that machine that has zigzag on it very often, so I did a little experimenting. This is the narrowest zigzag that it does, and this is 8 stitches per inch. This is 12 stitches per inch. Then I did it on the second one over to make a wider zigzag, but it's pulling up the bottom thread. I can see the dark pinkish gray thread. So I like the width of this, but I don't like seeing that bottom thread. So I adjusted the tension, and I think this stitch is perfect for what I want to do. So it didn't hurt to experiment because I got what I wanted, and now I can do the block. Be back in a minute with finished block for you. Would you like to peek over my shoulder a little bit to see what I'm doing? So I hope that you'll be able to see. I am just doing a simple zigzag along the pieces. And let me show you as I go. I'm a little bit in from the edge, so eventually that will fray a little bit, but it'll give it an interesting look. Now I need to bring the needle down to the outside of the stitch before I turn the corner so that it doesn't go out into the background. And that's all there is to it. I'm staying a little bit away from that edge because I don't want it to fray too much. Let me pull that pin out so it's out of my way. And then I'm just going to go into the middle. And because I'm putting a button in the middle, it will not matter. Okay, I'm going to go to the outside, and I'm going to turn it around and stitch down the next shape. And if when I am done, there's a little thread there, I can pull it right off, and it will not matter one little bit. So let me do one more side and show you that corner again. So as I get to the corner, if I want to hand crank it, it's okay to do that. I want it on the outside toward the point, but on the point. So if I need to, I can lift it up and pull my fabric so it's where I want it to be. And then I put it down. When I turn it, put it down, and away we go to do some more sewing. Let me finish this up, and we will look at it with the button. Here is the finished product, and I found I really like this button, but it is a shank button, so it would sit up a little bit, and I want a flat button. So I found this lovely purple one. I think instead of glitzy, I'm going to go with purple because there's other purple in the quilt, and this one will lay nice, flat, and tight, and it's still large enough it covers any little flaw in the middle. And like I said, if you have some fraying threads, you can clip those off, and it's no big deal, but it stays on there. Now, I need to put this button on, and I will be right back. Wrap this up today. We did 2 methods. We did a paper piece method, and we did an applique method. Now, I know my colors are a little different. Gray and the purples are a little different, but each technique has its place. If you like very fiddly, fussy points and very, very sharp point here, and you don't mind dealing with the paper and the seams, this is your method. If you are in a hurry and you don't mind raw edge applique, this is the method to make this block. And I know it was sort of cheating the way I took care of the center of this block by adding that button, but I think this is the one that is going to go on the front of the quilt because it was so much easier, and there aren't as many seams. So I think this is the method that I'm going to use. And there's another block that's very similar to this later on, and it might get done this way. So I hope you enjoyed today's show and you think about which way you want to make this block, because it is cute. It is very graphic with the points in the middle of that gray field. Very nice. Either way, I hope you enjoyed. Have a great afternoon. Good luck making your block. I need to go print out put up some directions for you that are down in the comments below. See you later. See you on Friday for Blabfest. Have a great afternoon. Thank you for watching.